Whenever I'm asked to do one of these presentations on artificial intelligence, I like to see where we are between today's artificial intelligence and Terminator 2. Here's what the former CEO of Google has to say about where we are on that roadmap.
There are roughly three things going on now that are going to profoundly change the world very quickly. The first is basically this question of context window. And for non-technical people, the context window is the prompt that you ask. So, study John F. Kennedy or something. Right. But in fact, that context window can have 1 million words in it. And this year, people are inventing a context window that is infinitely long. And this is very important because it means that you can take the answer from the system and feed it in and ask it another question. So I want a recipe. Let's say I want a recipe to make a drug or something. So they say, what's the first step? And it says, buy these materials. So then you say, okay, I bought these materials. Now what's my next step? And then it says, buy a mixing pan. And then the next step is, how long do I mix it for? You see, it's a recipe. That's called chain of thought reasoning. And it generalizes really well. We should be able, in 5 years, for example, to be able to produce 1,000-step recipes to solve really important problems in science, in medicine, in material science, climate change, that sort of thing. That's the first one. The second one is agents. And an agent can be understood as a large language model that knows something new or has learned something. So an example would be read all of chemistry, learn something about chemistry, have a bunch of hypotheses about chemistry, run some tests in a lab about chemistry, and then add that to your agent. These agents are going to be really powerful, and it's reasonable to expect that agents will be, not only will there be a lot of them, and I mean millions, but they'll be like the equivalent of GitHub for agents. There'll be lots and lots of agents running around and available to you. And the third one, which to me is the most profound, which is already beginning to happen, is text to action. And what that is write me a piece of software to do something. Right? You just say it. I mean, can you imagine having programmers that actually do what you say you want? And it does it 24 hours a day. And strangely, these systems are good at writing code such as language like Python. You put all that together, and you've got infinite context window, the ability for agents, and then the ability to do this programming. Now, this is very interesting. What then happens? There's a lot of questions here, and now we get into the questions of science fiction. I'm sure the three things I've named are happening because that work is happening now. But at some point, these systems will get powerful enough that you'll be able to take the agents and they'll start to work together. At some point, people believe that these agents will develop their own language. And that's the point when we don't understand what we're doing. You know what we should do? Pull the plug.
Let's start with ChatGPT. So it is one of the most used platforms in the public space, but is it a good tool for internal auditors? I was challenged to look at AI prompts for internal audit and specifically for improving our report writing. Here, when you visit ChatGPT, this is a business profile, so that's going to be something to keep in mind. So I am on version 5.2. I believe if you're a public-facing user, you're going to be on version 3.0. It's going to look slightly different, and y'all are going to see something like this, but feel free to follow along with these use cases if you'd like. So our first use case, let's go with our 12 use cases for internal audit, thanks to KPMG and the audit board. And here I'm going to pull a couple examples here that I think will show you how ChatGPT works. I'm going to show you some risk and controls unique to internal audit, and also how you can improve the results that you get from this public-facing tool as an internal auditor. The suggestion we got from our 12 use cases is right here. I'll pick this prompt up. And about 80% of auditors have never used ChatGPT. Or let me say that another way. About half of the public has never used artificial intelligence. About 80% of auditors have not used artificial intelligence, according to these results from the audit board. So I am going to start off basic here. And a prompt is how you tell the tool what to do. Here's the prompt that I pasted from our 12 audit use cases, and here is the result. For clarity, this is not sped up. This is an actual example of the result, and this is how quickly it returns those results from artificial intelligence. Let's scroll through our result here. And when we reach the end here, we'll get an opportunity to say whether this was a good or a bad result, and did it do what we expected to. As I said, when you get to the end of your prompt return, you'll get a few menu options down here where you can copy the results and you can paste it in whatever tool of your choice. Is this a good response? Bad response? You can also share it to others, either in your workspace or to your team. And then finally, you can try again if this wasn't the result you wanted, and you've got some more actions to choose from here. So I'm going to say this is a good response. And then I also told you that I was going to show you a couple ways that you can improve ChatGPT. You can go into your profile. So if you are an internal auditor, I would go into personalization. And you can change these settings, but I would keep in mind that you might want to add your occupation because, as we know, as internal auditors, we might be looking for different results than the public at large. So I'm going to add that I'm an auditor for my occupation. Save that. And ChatGPT will take this into consideration for all results and returns going forward. So that's an easy way to improve your results if you didn't like this one that you got from ChatGPT. Now I'm going to start a new chat so you can see an example of how you can improve your results. Now, keeping in mind that ChatGPT, designed for the public at large, is going to provide by nature generic results. I'll show you what materials, at least publicly available, that ChatGPT is training on and why that might happen. So as internal auditors, you might want to consider refining your prompt or doing some prompt engineering to make it an even better result. Here's an example of what that will look like, or two examples of what that will look like. Here's one prompt that you can drop in. So you go back to your ChatGPT window. This is to improve your prompt, and let's try that prompt again with this result. So pulling our 12 use cases for our payroll audit in a new chat window. So it's learning independently from our previous chat, meaning it's not using it to inform this response. And here's our result. So you can see this one's taking a little bit longer because I have given it some additional instructions to keep in mind. As you can see, we're getting some real examples, some better use cases, and the tool is already providing some more in-depth analysis that might be more beneficial to us as an internal auditor versus just a public-facing user of ChatGPT. You can scroll to the bottom, or you can use this down arrow to get to the bottom of your results. And once again, I'll use the ranking feature to say, is this a good or bad result if you're trying this at home or on your personal computer. One thing I like about the upgrade that they've made to the recent ChatGPT is it's doing a better job at referencing its sources. So for internal auditors where we have to cross-reference back to typically an authoritative source, they have gotten better at this. I am saying it that way because I have heard, I'm not going to do in this video, that a number of these links don't work or may be broken, but it is something they are clearly actively trying to improve in if you want to be able to cross-reference to the original source beyond just the return from ChatGPT or any artificial intelligence tool that you're using. I'm also going to go through Google Gemini's AI tool, as well as their learning notebook, to talk about some ways that you can improve results there. Again, good response. And in this same chat window, I'm going to add another prompt that you can use to improve your returns as an internal auditor using these public-facing tools. So if you just, by its nature or by design, it's a public-facing tool predominantly used by the public. So ChatGPT tends to lean towards agreement. As an internal auditor, we typically need objective, unbiased, reasonable conclusions to reach. So here's another skill set or another prompt that you can add to even further refine those prompts. And as I said, if you've already gone in and set some of those personalizations or systems tools to let it know that you're an internal auditor, and it might already take some of these things into consideration. So on your screen, you'll see, and I'll capture here, prompt 2. To see how this improves our results. So let's see if this changes anything that ChatGPT has to tell us about this payroll audit. And once again, good response. Finally, just to align with the audit objective of this training was to use AI agentic prompts to improve report writing. So once again, as a reminder, I'm in my intellectual sparring chat window. I've already given it the prompt that I want it to challenge my assumptions, not just agree with me, because I'm not a public-facing member. In my use cases here, I've already updated my personalized settings to let it know that I am an internal auditor, and I've also asked it to be more professional in its returns as far as this chat session goes. I'm going to upload a dummy file. And then I'm going to prompt it, in this case, to do two things. This report is around 50 pages. Summarize this audit report in 1,000 words or less. You can make this an executive summary or whatever would be useful to you for improving your audit report. I'm using this just as a use case or example for this audit objective of this particular training. And let's look at our return. And then, of course, as I said, let's rank this return and see if it's a good or bad result for us. So there's an easy way to test this result because I asked it to do so in 1,000 words. The result looks pretty good, but let's see if it did what I asked. I copied it from ChatGPT, and let's check our word count. And it did so in 899 words, so I'm going to say this is a good result. Overall, I think ChatGPT is a good tool. Obviously, for the public, it's one of the most used. They estimate that they have 2.3 billion users and 200 million weekly visits, so it's clearly satisfying some needs. However, for internal auditors, I think there's some additional needs and risks that we would have to consider. So, for example, do we need to bring this on-prem or on-premise? Can we still use the public-facing tool? If we are going to use the public-facing tool, what information do we want or not want uploaded into this information, keeping in mind that whatever you say to ChatGPT can and will be used against you in a court of law. So I took these 12 use cases for internal audit, looking at ChatGPT. Here's all 12 that you can find on the screen here. And here's some that I think you can launch and start today with minimal risk exposure, even using the public-facing ChatGPT. Obviously, you'll want to work with your own information technology or universal services to ensure that you have the proper controls in place. But probably more importantly, you want to make sure that your staff is knowledgeable and well trained on these use cases, on which ones will best work for them. And as I showed you, make sure or consider making those engineer prompts, even or prompt engineering, to ensure that the prompts that it returns are objective, fact-based, well-researched from authoritative sources, and are easy, and you can cross-reference that information, or that cross-references are easily available. As I said, they have improved in this, but there's still been a lot that I've heard anyway, anecdotal data, that some of those links do not work, or it's something they're continuing to improve on. Some that I think you can immediately do and benefit right now as both a cost and time saving is work paper reviews. AI tools can perform first pass reviews that significantly cut down on leadership level and effort, fixing grammatical or spelling errors, make descriptions more clear and concise. I'll show you some more, and I think even better example of this in some AI tools that I'm about to demonstrate for you, as well as how to emulate. And you can give best practices and examples. So let's say you have a work paper that has been successful, or you've had a prompt that has been successful for you. You can upload that to ChatGPT to reference. And so you can say, return the result with this detail level, format, tone, language, length, footnote, style, etc., etc. Two other practices that I recommend and I like from this AI use cases is your use case prompt libraries. So make sure that your audit shop is collecting, curating, and categorizing the prompts that have proven effective and successful. You can bring that all together in a prompt library. This can be as simple as an Excel work paper that you share among staff, or notebook, or keep in mind they're going to be agnostic to a number of the tools that I'm recommending here. But a prompt library, I would say, is a best practices, especially as we move through these first iterations, of you will, of artificial intelligence. I also like the knowledge repositories. The example they use is from KPMG. They created a repository of different regulations and the firm's proprietary and otherwise knowledge. So think if you have a knowledge base, knowledge center, or knowledge white paper that you want to share, or you want the tool to learn from, you can either point it at that knowledge base system or tool, or you can upload those work papers, and I'll show you how to do that later in this presentation. And I'll talk a little bit about what I see as the future case and probably even the most useful case for internal audit for agentic AI. And that's where agents are effectively working on your behalf autonomously, obviously introducing, and another term that I'm going to bring up is human in the loop, to ensure that the results that they give are risk and appropriately controlled and matches and aligns with the audit objective or your risk tolerance for your audit shop. And this might include, they could look for use cases of autonomous risk monitoring, risk assessment, compliance checks, fraud detection, real-time decisions and prioritizations, as well as give recommendations for the audit approach that you should take to ensure scenarios and simulations, audit report generation, and how to improve those audit reports, which was the topic of this particular training, which I think this tools, all of the AI tools that I'm going to cover here are already great for if you want to use it in a narrowed manner of improving your audit reports. And I'll show you some examples of it, specifically how to improve audit report and writing in this next section. Now let's look at Microsoft Copilot as an optional artificial intelligence tool for internal auditors. One of the benefits, so this particular training is for the public sector, a yellow book audit shop, and one of the benefits that I've seen here already, reducing some of the risk and controls that can be identified, or some of the risk that might be introduced with using a public facing tool like Google Gemini, which I'll talk about next, or ChatGPT, like I talked about first, is the fact that for most of us, because we have a Microsoft Office product or Microsoft Office suite, it's already on premise. And if our IT or Universal Services team has worked with us, we've already set it up to protect for some of the risks that might be introduced by going to a public-facing tool. Still, you have to train your staff on what, if any, work papers you're going to allow to be used in these tools, recognizing that when you use these tools, that information by the introduction of that use might itself make you subject to public information requests, or you might simply upload sensitive information to these public facing tools. So you still have to train your staff on here from our audit manual. I might go through our audit manual and say, here's where we'll allow for use cases or eligible use cases for internal audit and artificial intelligence. Or I might say, we'll have a ban. More importantly, or perhaps a best practice, here's our mission, our AI governance and vision statement, and here's our SOPs and policy, as well as training materials, our continual professional education, where you can learn how to responsibly, ethically, and successfully use these AI tools. With all that being said, we can use, in this particular case, the criteria, the commercial from Microsoft itself. Let's look at the criteria, what Copilot says it can do, and then we'll look at the condition. Then I'll screen share what Copilot actually did, and we'll compare those two results for our audit finding. So whether you saw it or not, there was at least 3 prompts featured in that commercial. Whether you saw it or not, there was 3 prompts, or at least 3 prompts featured in that commercial for our criteria. Now we're going to test if that actually works in the real world, our use case, or our fieldwork test in this audit example. Now, I will say that it is important to note, which they don't cover in that example, that you need a number of different licenses. So a number of people have tried to duplicate this commercial and failed. So we'll see if we are able to be successful here. Mine is a Copilot 365 license. So you'll have different and maybe even more functionality with a business license. So the prompt for the commercial was summarize product launch discussion, which I will say I do think it does a pretty good example of summarizing and capturing these discussions. You can do that one of 2 ways with Microsoft products. So if you do have Microsoft Copilot and the right licenses, you can set it up to automatically do the transcription reads from your files. So you can set Copilot to read your emails and summarize your emails, meeting notes. You can provide meeting notes and it will summarize those. or you can have Copilot and Teammate automatically use the transcript function, and it will summarize those meeting notes, and it will either send that out automatically or send to you for downloadable to say, is this accurate? I will say that really all of these AI tools, that is something that they do very well and is a best practice, because transcription is that technology has been around so long that transcription does work pretty well. I'm going to say summarize for my product, summarize audit discussion. Let's provide my dummy file. Let's use our SOP. I have it set to smart. You can choose these other features. For the purposes of this, let's set it to, we've got 30 seconds. Think a little bit deeper, summarize audit discussion, and let's check out the result. So similar to our ChatGPT example, we can go to the bottom here. I'm just going to assume this is a good example. This is a good result. I'm going to rank it. So now I'm teaching Copilot that this is a good result. This is what I'm looking for. In the video, it also did a rewrite with Copilot. So it's take this, rewrite this section. So for those of you who are watching this for how to improve your audit report, let's have it rewrite this section. And it said to visualize as table. Let's see if that works. So I would say that's not too bad. It has put it into a table. It's not the prettiest or best formatted table in the world, but it did do exactly what I asked. And that's something to keep in mind as you're working with these AI tools. Most of them don't think independently, so it's going to do what you ask. I asked it to summarize this information in a table, and that's what it does. Because it is a Microsoft product, it also gives me these opportunities to export. Let's make sure the licenses work, because we know that that's broken down in some cases, and let's see if it'll let me export as Excel. So if you do have the right licenses, Microsoft Copilot Chat can export to any Microsoft product, or at least Microsoft products available. And then we can also, the final one from that commercial, let's check one more area from our criteria. Let's see if we can directly from Microsoft Copilot create a PowerPoint presentation based on this information. So we can go back to our original query. We've got an Excel file, and let's see if it can also do from the commercial, like I said, our criteria, our real world condition. Can it take this information and create a PowerPoint? Now this one did take a little bit longer, but I'm going to assume it's because I told it to think deeply. It did tell me those search results would take longer to give us. And let's see how this PowerPoint presentation looks. I'm going to down. So it did return a PowerPoint presentation. I would say that this is pretty basic. It's going to require some work. So I would say my takeaways here is, yes, Microsoft Copilot is a good tool. It does do, like most artificial intelligence tools, exactly what I ask about it, but I am going to need to do some rework to both review this information. So this by no means is not going to be the final product. So before I wrap up this video, I'll talk about how sometimes with artificial intelligence, yes, it does return a result, but it's not the final result. So you might have to do some internal analysis to see, are these the areas in which we want to use artificial intelligence? Because as you can see in this example here, I'm going to have to do some rework. This could potentially be some hours of rework. It could also be potentially quicker for me to have done this without artificial intelligence at all. I will say one other thing to keep in mind specific to PowerPoint. If you go to new presentation, you might get better results by creating from scratch and then creating your presentation here with Microsoft Copilot and using your prompt directly in the tool for your final product. So in this case, I would go back to my internal audit manual. So I have seen that at least as formatting and results, sometimes it's better to just produce it right here in Microsoft Copilot and PowerPoint. So create a presentation about internal audit, just to give an example, and let's look at that result. And here's our result. Now, for the purposes of the video, I did fast forward here just so you wouldn't be sitting in silence while this rendered. I will say that for my use anyway, it took longer than 5 minutes, so that is a departure from the commercial. I will say that this is a pretty good looking presentation that I have not reviewed, and I will have to QA and QC, which I'd recommend any internal audit shop do. So keep in mind that even though this returns a pretty good presentation, I've got 18 slides here. There was, in my opinion, a breakdown between the conversion from Copilot to Microsoft PowerPoint. And in fact, the better version came from me going directly into Microsoft PowerPoint. I do own that that could be a licensing issue, but I will also point out that the commercial didn't point out anything about licensing, and I just attempted to do or reduplicate what was done in the commercial. So I would say that this is maybe an 80% passing grade. It did what it said it was going to do in the commercial, but it did not do so as well. And I haven't done any QA or QC on the return materials to make sure that this is both accurate and the exact result that I'm looking for. When you're done, you keep that presentation. Finally, let's look at Google Gemini, or more specifically, a tool powered by the same AI model, their Notebook LM. So I'm not going to go through the examples for Google Gemini because this is for public sector. So the majority of our individuals are going to be using the tools that I just reviewed, which were ChatGPT and or Microsoft Copilot, just because we already have the licenses to access most of those, or we can bring it on premise. I will point out that Google does have tools for businesses and the public sector for government, but the majority of individuals haven't taken those, or would need to do a request for a proposal to do so, or might not have the access to that, or might be given to us. The artificial intelligence might be given to us rather than for us to select it as an independent agency. However, I did want to at least look to the future state because I do think their tool is pretty cool and interesting, and that is when you visit notebooklm.google. You can find that link here. I'll drop it in the show notes as well as a training and course that you can take, sponsored by Coursera and Google, to get a certificate in both of these programs. And what that looks like, as I said, you can see the plans here. And if you need to bring this in for your business enterprise, here. In practice, what it looks like, I'm going to again create a new notebook. Let me go out and find my dummy files. I'll just bring all these in for the sake of this, and just so you can see, these are pictures, Word documents. I've got a PDF as well as some files and folders, and actually I'll need to see if they can upload from those folders. And the difference and reason I like this is it's going to train and return results only based on the information that I have granted it access here from these documents. So for those of you, especially in the public sector or government, who might be unsure or think it is too much of a risk for an organization for you to use open AI models, this might be a remedy or solution or a low risk option for you to use. Yellow book right here. So let's say you want to train a new auditor, and you can just prompt it like you're having a conversation. So again, what I like about this tool, especially for my internal auditors, is that it is referenced. As I said, this is something they're trying to improve on across all large language models. So your big one is ChatGPT, that 200 million weekly visits, 2.3 billion unique visits a year, 200 million weekly. So something they're trying to improve on, but this one does it automatically because it's sourcing to, again, the resources that you already uploaded. So it's showing me here that here are the ethics standards for Yellow Book that an auditor, a new auditor otherwise would need to use. So I like this tool because a lot of times when we're starting with a new audit shop, sometimes our training plan is, here's your laptop, go read the Yellow Book. So this can give you an opportunity to do a more in-depth training, or you can set up, they also have some quizzes that you can automatically create through Google Gemini. So you can use both of these tools. And I really think the takeaway is going to be from a lot of these artificial intelligence tools is it might not be one comprehensive solution, but learning more about the tools or the business justification or case that you need for these tools. This particular training was around how can you improve report writing, but how can we use AI tools to augment the human experience, or as Google refers to it, a human in the loop. And again, going to the bottom here, you can always rank your results to make sure that you're getting the results that you want. I'm going to say this is a good response. Again, training and teaching the AI tool that this is what I'm looking for, but I really think that the Google Notebook is going to be something and might be the best off-the-shelf item for specific to internal audits or internal auditors in the public sector, while recognizing, of course, that you'll probably want to work with your universal services or IT team to ensure that you've set this up. You still have all the potential risk and training that you would need to provide staff on what you will or will not allow, what is or is not not eligible to be uploaded into this public-facing profile. As I said, you can sign up. This is my personal account. If you're comfortable, you can have your staff create their own Google Notebook. Perhaps you have an enterprise version, or if you want additional security, you can sign up for an enterprise version and limit your authorizations. And that plan will tell you which features, sources, and notebooks, as well as I think they also have whom can be granted access to the model as well. So I'm very excited about this particular tool. I'm excited by all the artificial intelligence tools and continuing to learn more. As I mentioned, Coursera has a course that you can register for. As I mentioned, for those interested, you can register for this specific course. Again, I'm agnostic to the tool. This one was free, at least for the first 7 days. It's a 4-hour course for Google AI Essentials, and it'll teach you step by step how to utilize each of these models, as well as, like I said, some of those training plans. So let's say you have a new staff auditor, maybe you have a mature staff auditor, 5, 10, 20 years of experience on still learning how to use these AI tools safely, ethically, and responsibly while maintaining compliance with whatever your SOPs or controls or your governance structure may be. Very excited about this opportunity here. And then I'll show you what potentially could be the future state for not only these Google AI tools, but Agentic tools, or AI tools that work on your behalf to make you a better auditor. And that might look something like this.
The hype right now in the technology world over the last couple of days is this piece of technology that came out over the last number of months. It's called ClaudeBot, and it's actually been renamed to Moltbot. I'm not actually recommending anybody download this because this is an AI that's always on, that works 24/7. I actually downloaded this on a separate computer, a separate email address, a separate messaging service. But it's a glimpse of what AI can do today. It's kind of like having Siri, but actually get stuff done, not just tell you the weather. When I woke up in the morning, I've been researching, I'm coming up with a new book, and it knows that I'm researching a new book, and it came up with its own like software as a service around the research around my book. I didn't ask it to come up with a software as a service. It just intuitively knew that I'm doing this, and sort of came up with a better way of making this happen. But this is a glimpse for me around what an autonomous agent is going to look like, that it's going to make decisions without me even asking for it.